Hello, everybody. Welcome to Profit Concierge Snack and Learn on this Tuesday. This is our first one of the week, and I am thrilled to have Bre Hamilton with us. We get to talk about a couple of different things today, but let me first introduce Bre. So she's been doing business a number of ways, and like a lot of us, has pivoted a lot. And I think a lot of us share that story, so that's no surprise to us. But doing business the way she does it now, and having experienced herself all the different forms of teaching and coaching that are available in the online space, what she did was realize there's a big problem that's out there a lot of the time with teaching and coaching, and that is that people are teaching a very specific and structured way to do something, and if it doesn't fit for the client necessarily, it doesn't help them. So as she saw this, she knew something wasn't right because everybody's journey's a little bit different, as we all know, and the way we do things is different, which is a big part of why I wanted to talk to Bre, because I kind of attacked the financial world the same way. So in 2020, last year, during the craziness of last year, her journey switched a little bit to a soulful strategy. And I want to talk to her a lot today about that soulful strategy. And it kept developing. And today she really believes that people are looking for doing business in a different way that feels good to them. So this is where her values and connection really come into play. And she completely adds a whole different kind of value to people now. So a little bit more about her. When she's not sitting behind the computer, she enjoys trying out lattes of the season. She binge watches Netflix shows and loves to read a good book with a glass of wine. The piano is her spiritual animal, and rose gold is her most favorite glittery object. All things, I think, which probably influence how she does business today. She homeschools her 3 kids, which is amazing because that is a ton of work and full-time job all in itself, and enjoys getting outside, being immersed in nature, and dreaming of the day she can surround herself with chickens, goats, and horses. So Bre, welcome with that introduction. I'm so glad to have you on the Profit Concierge.
Thank you so much, Pam. I'm super happy to be here. I know we've talked about doing this a while back, so it's just nice to be here today and talk about things. And so much has just changed since the beginning of this year. So
I love it. And that's actually what I want to talk about. I love the way you stay fluid and flexible, but yet still focused on your core values. And maybe if you don't mind, because I think it might help people, what did shift this year? What's kind of different now than was even 3 months ago?
Yeah. So I am an extremely spiritual person, and it took me a long time to kind of tap into what that meant for me. So like a tiny little background segue here. I grew up in a cult, a Christian cult. And so my experience of God and my experience of faith was very, I guess I would call it now old paradigm.
Got it.
And it's the way it can be related to business, just the same as pretty much anything, it's like there's old paradigm and new paradigm. And for me, old paradigm is like the old way of doing things. And so my relationship with God when I was growing up was very old paradigm. I did not feel connected to God, and therefore I was not really connected to myself, didn't know who I was and all of that. And, fast forward to today, I consider myself a very spiritual person. And I have a very personal relationship with God that is nothing like how I was raised. And it really is like, I consider that to be a part of my business. Like he is a part of my business. And so
in almost sharing Old Testament, New Testament.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Right. There's a lot of differences. And so it's important, especially for those of us who have kind of been through some form of religious trauma or toxicity of any kind, to find ourselves and our own version of like, what do we feel connected to, so some people will call that God, universe, spirit, source, whatever. But for me, it's like, it's, are you able to feel connected to whatever that is?
And that's incorporated in your business now, as well as your personal life.
Yeah. And so I truly believe that connection is like the cornerstone of everything. It is, I have a framework called the CASH framework. And the first part of that is connection, because I believe that it starts with connection. And I have actually, so in December, I actually stepped back from my business. I was going to launch something leading up to Christmas, and I was feeling really disconnected. I wasn't sure what was going on, and my coach was like, "You need to, you're going to have to step back and like let it come to you, because if you just keep pushing forward like this, you're going to feel more and more burnt out." So I took a step back. It was really weird and scary for me, because I'm like the type of person that like needs to be doing things, and like I need to be taking those
forward motion regardless of what the motion is. Yeah.
Exactly. And one of the things I've learned is I actually get the most clarity when I take a step back, and it fast forwards things. If I had continued to push, twice since December, I've had to do this. And if I continued to push, I wouldn't have gotten the answers that I needed. And so I took 2 weeks off at Christmas. I don't remember the last time I've done that where I've actually not done business, not done anything. And I just spent time with my family. Obviously, Christmas was really weird this year because we didn't go anywhere or do anything. We had our own family stuff here. And it was really nice. I actually feel like it spoiled us for other Christmases when there's not a pandemic and we're not.
Okay.
A
whole new experience.
But it's like usually we're just rushing around here, there, and everywhere at Christmas. And it just was so nice to like just relax and enjoy it. And so through that experience, so last year is when Soulful Strategy actually first came into me. It just intuitively came to me that was what I was supposed to call my podcast, and that became a part of my business. And I knew what it meant, but I was still pushing against this idea of structured strategy. Like, no, you have to do things this way. You have to do things the right way.
Yep.
And so when I took that step back in December, coming into the beginning of 2021, it became really clear to me that it was time for me to release that attachment to a specific way of doing things. And it wasn't just like, it was like I had released it for other people, but I had not released it for myself.
Wow, that's interesting. Just like so many things, we're easy to be the doctor for others, but not ourselves, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so I then at the beginning of February, I actually did this activation. I don't know what people call it, but meditation or activation, whatever. And it was like, it just became super clear to me on exactly what I was supposed to be doing. And it started leading me into the direction of what I'm doing as of today, which is helping people like me who they do want this like life and business that brings them freedom and choice. But they come from that past of religious toxicity, religious trauma, whatever that might look like. And we all know that we experience, like in the online space, we can experience sales and marketing trauma as well.
Yes.
And so for some of us, it's like, it's compounding that trauma that we have not dealt with. And I've spent the last, 12 years since leaving the church healing through different modalities that I have utilized to heal through whether that be like therapy, life coaching, things like that I've invested in, and plus my own spiritual work has been a part of that. And I can really see how it's so hard when you're still stuck in that stuff to be connected to yourself, because you don't really know who you are outside of that. And you also are like, you feel pulled to having a faith, but because of the stuff you've experienced, it's hard for you to tap into like
such a common story, even beyond the religious cult. I mean, I know plenty of Catholics who've had this issue, who are still called to the faith, but can't wrap their head around it because of how much it damaged them as a youth. And I think this is really a powerful conversation, because what I'm hearing you say is those circumstances, those traumas, and they're nothing less than trauma, can influence how you even deal with the bumps on the road for entrepreneurship. So in your rethinking of how you do your business, do you bring now all of this to the table when you're coaching a client about business?
Yeah. So on top of like all that work that I've talked about, I also am in the process of getting my ICF certification, which is the International Coaching Federation.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So you have to get like 100 hours of coaching, which I don't have anywhere near 100 hours yet. But there's like 2 phases that you take. So I took the first phase in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
And the second phase I'm either doing this year or next year. Haven't really decided, but I'm also going to be doing a trauma program because
great.
I do know stuff from my own personal experience, and I also have a very strong coaching process that I learned through getting my ICF certification, and how to coach people, not just tell them, but actually dig for their own answers and stuff like that. But I think it's important. Like, I know I still have a lot of people that have known me from like my strategic days where I was actually a strategist. I called myself a strategist, and that is what I was doing. That still do come to me from that space, but I'm very clear in my content that like I utilize coaching and strategy, and I always focus on the coaching first, because sometimes people think they're coming to you for like, oh, I need help with reels. But actually they're suffering from some kind of confidence thing that's going on.
Exactly.
And when you start asking some questions, that stuff comes up, and you're able to actually focus in on the real thing that's behind the thing.
Mm-hmm. It goes so much. I've had this conversation a number of times this week with some other people, as you invite them in for what they think they need, and you certainly give them that. But the bigger gift or the bigger delivery is so much more and quite different usually than with me in finance. It's the same thing. We invite somebody in who thinks they need to understand the financial reports they have, or help with getting a bookkeeper or whatever it might be. That is the tiny tip of the iceberg. The real thing we need to get at is at the base of the iceberg, where it moves so much more easily when you identify those real deep-seated issues or problems or challenges, or what's really causing the problem.
Yeah, I think there's a saying in the online space, sell them what they want, give them what they need.
Give them what they need. Yep, that's exactly right. And so one of the things that you mentioned so much in your bio that I think is really interesting is that you saw how many people just had a structure and they taught that structure. What do you do differently? And what are some tips you can give us as other coaches and people online for helping to get out of that mode and recognize kind of the individuality of our clients a little bit in what we deliver?
Yeah. So what I kind of tell people is that I take the structure out of strategy and I put the soul back into strategy. So
I like that. That's a great line.
Yeah, I love it too. And I think people sometimes start hearing my message and they're like, well, I have to have strategy. And you do. We all use strategies. Like us showing up on this live is a strategy that you're utilizing in your business to both connect with your audience and also consistently show up, right?
Yep.
So there are many different, like probably hundreds of strategies that you could use, maybe thousands. Use, right? Like even when it comes to launching something. So let's say you're somebody who doesn't want to do the evergreen or passive, whatever. You want to do live launches. There's like a myriad of different ways you can perform a live launch. You can do a free challenge. You could do a masterclass. You could do a low cost offer that leads into your higher cost offer. You could do the whole, like the launch phases where you're teasing stuff out and then you're promoting something free here and then you're getting people on a wait list. Like there's just a whole bunch of different
million combinations, right?
Yeah. And I've also seen people that like, they just get an intuitive hit to offer something and they fill their spots, right? Like they just talk about it and they fill their spots. So, I'm definitely like, I want to say that depending on where your audience is, that may not work.
Well, it varies. This audience is all over the place. So we're from just starting the door on a new business venture to, 8 figures are in the group. So
yeah, exactly. And that's where like aligning it with you. So first of all, a lot of people feel like they have to stick to the specific launch strategy because, this coach who's very successful did this launch strategy that she came up with it. She did it in her business and it's been very successful for her. So like, we're not saying that it doesn't work, because it obviously worked for her. But the reason it's working for you is because of a whole bunch of different reasons, right? Like your audience might be cold. You might just have started out and you just have not warmed up your audience enough to have a $10,000 launch. You may also be super new, and maybe how you're writing your content is like boxy, and you're not like allowing it to flow and really come from the heart. That might not be hitting with your audience. There's just a whole bunch of, and like this, where you've come from is different from her. That the experiences that you've had in business are different from hers. And so there's just a whole bunch of different things that contribute to like why this worked for her. And it doesn't mean that there's parts of that strategy that you can't utilize. Like you don't have to throw everything out the window as soon as you hear me say, take the structure out of strategy, like don't throw the whole thing out the window. And so for me personally, this is just an example. I followed a strategy, the waitlist strategy to a T, right? Like I followed the whole structure. And what I found is there are two alignment things when it comes to like launching.
Oh, cool.
There's how you feel good about launching. So like, what do you feel aligned with? What lights you up to like how you show up for your launch and stuff like that, but also how your audience wants to buy. And for me, I discovered that my audience is not like wait lists, that they do love master classes. And I treat my masterclass attendees like a wait list. I actually will, promote for the masterclass. And once I have people in there and I'm running the masterclass, then they're the ones that I'm emailing after the masterclass. They get the early bird bonuses and all of that stuff, just like somebody would with a wait list. But they prefer to actually have something to engage in, like a masterclass or a challenge, versus just being on a wait list.
Right, so this is gold. I want to stop and unpack that a minute, because you already dropped the tips that I normally ask people to drop at the end. Okay. Because it's so easy for us to get enamored with the process. And I know I often forget, like it's easy for me to say, so this is great. People will see this and love it and do this thing. And I totally revamped my strategy because I realized my potential client base doesn't need a sales call, doesn't want a sales call. When they're talking about finances, when they're talking about their money, this is only going to happen after you build a trusted relationship. So everything for me shifted when I realized that. And that's when I shifted, hey, let's build this community, because number one, I love building a community and this is a lot of fun. And number two, down the road, whether it's 6 months, a year, 2 years, if somebody needs something, they'll know because they've been dealing with me for that long, whether I'll be a good for them or not good for them. And then it'll naturally fall into place. So all of a sudden that shifted to what you just said. It never occurred to me what that was, but it was thinking about your client's perspective. How do they like to buy? That is brilliant. Yeah.
I think it's really important to recognize that our business is actually not really all about us.
Yeah. And we think we're doing that, but even when we think we're doing that, sometimes we're not getting out of our own heads.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why, like, obviously I'm an engagement expert as well. And so I always talk about how important engagement is. This is why it's important to connect and engage with your audience. If you aren't talking to them, you're not going to hear about these things. Like, you're not going to start understanding what they love, what they hate, what's stopping them in business right now. And that's just like on the business front, but like also connecting on a personal level with them. That's where they, like you said, building trust. That's where they build that relationship with you, because they have those connection points that you've had conversations about their kids or where they live or whatever. And these things seem so trivial, but people want to be seen and heard. That's really what it comes down to, is like, they don't want to feel like they're just like this number or this checkbox. They actually want to feel seen and heard in the relationship with you, because that's actually what's building trust.
Right. Exactly. That is so spot on. And that you build that into your strategy and coaching is awesome, because I think we miss the boat on that a lot. I know I do. Even when I think I'm being as thoughtful as possible about the client or about the prospective client, you still, it's very easy to get in your own head and not realize it, which is the value of coaching, right? Because it's so easy for us to see what we can help other people do, but we miss out on our own blind spots, I think. And I love the fact also that you're targeting a niche that I think is unattended. And I think there are people that target folks who have had religious trauma, but I don't know that I've never talked to anybody that's focused on the business impact for entrepreneurs of having been through any sort of religious trauma. So, and to the extent that religious trauma damages spirituality, and gets that disconnection happening, kind of, I think a lot of people in this group certainly know that there's got to be connection to something, be it God, be it universe, be it the same thing called different names, who knows? People are really aware in this group that that's got to happen. And yet, if you're standing on the outside of it, it seems insurmountable to get that connection. So I love that that's what you're doing.
Yeah, I think just through my own experience, and not really just through my own experience. I mean, I have lots of connections with people who've been through similar stuff because, when you've been through something similar, you just tend to automatically connect with these people.
Yeah.
And so, I have several people just that I can think of right now that I've had these conversations with, and we've all faced that same thing of like having to rediscover ourselves and God. And it's like, that's a huge thing. Like people who haven't been through it, it's really hard for them to understand like how crazy it is in our head almost. Because we have this, especially if you grew up in it and that's all
you got that tug, whether you like it or not.
It's like brainwashing, really.
Yeah.
And our brain has been wired to like go this certain way or think this certain way or believe this certain way. And so like, for example, there are still times now when I will do something, let's say have a glass of wine. And that was something that was definitely taboo growing up. And I still feel that like, is this wrong? And I mean, that's not the only thing. There's lots of things. Right. It was so extreme. So there's so many people that have experienced that and then are now, they are trying to find themselves in the business world. I have someone I know that has tried to do multiple different things. And I think what has been missing is that connection piece.
Yeah.
And it's like, and that's why I actually, what happened at the beginning of this year was I had a program in mind and it completely morphed into a coaching style thing rather than a strategic teach you how to do engagement. That's why I'm doing a workshop for that at the end of this month instead. Yeah.
Cool. By the way, I want to remind you to drop the comments in the comments here later on, the link to that, because I'd love for people to have the opportunity to get more info on that.
Yeah. So I ended up actually breaking apart my program into 3 different programs. And so the first program is called Soulful You, and that's where you're building that connection back to yourself and your faith, whatever that might look like for you, your spirituality, and, connecting back with your values, creating some boundaries in your life, stuff like that. That's really all about you. And then, the next level is Soulful Business, where we're actually building up the foundations of your business. Because now that you've got those connections to yourself and, whatever is outside of yourself, now you're able to actually lay the foundations for your business, solid foundations that can take you far. And then the third level is more of a mastermind type level, a smaller group of people, and that's Soulful Connection. And that's really where we're like expanding on the foundations and on that connection and really growing your business and scaling it. So
I love that. And the thing I really love about the way you're talking about this is, your person, for lack of a better term, is God, but we all may define that thing, whatever it is, differently, but you're not excluding. So like one of the things you brought forward, I think, from your trauma actually is that in your definition of spirituality now, which does mean God, you don't exclude anybody who looks at it differently. And I think that's really important to know. And I think like we get a lot of folks who watch this on replay, and I really hope there are a number of people kind of in my head that I'd love to have watch this because I know they've struggled with that disconnection because of awful religious experiences. A lot of my friends are gay, lesbian, transgendered, and the religion is just ostracized them. Formal religion on the whole has just ostracized them. And unless they were lucky enough to grow up in a church that didn't do that, in fact, did the opposite, and actually maybe lived via the New Testament and a real reading of the Old Testament, not to kind of go down that road, but they church and God are a bad thing, and they always will be because they punished them. So a way that allows them to understand that there still can be a connection to something bigger than themselves. When you don't hear that, you can just feel so alone. Yeah. So I'm really loving, and I hope a lot of people watch this on the replay, because you don't have to be alone. There's a different way to get there.
Yeah, exactly. It can be so damaging, and it can take a really long time to feel like you can trust people who label themselves as Christians. Yeah, it's hard. There's a lot there. Like we could be here all day.
I know. That's the problem with these lives. Sometimes I get on a thing, I'm like, let's just dive into this further. But I'm with you. It's
for clarity, like my best friend is a pagan.
It's all spirituality.
And we both met in a Christian blogging group.
That's hysterical.
At the time, I wasn't even like considering myself a Christian. I was still like totally
nothing.
Pulled off from that. I just like wanted nothing to do with God or the church or anything. And she's a pagan and a third generation medium. So she should not have joined a group like that. But again, there's things that will happen through your journey of healing that like, it won't make sense when you look back, you're like what? But there's always a reason. And like, we were meant to meet each other, and we've been through a lot together. We've known each other for a few years now, and we talk every single day. And
she was meant to join a Christian group because you guys met. Yeah.
So that is like any of the things that might be happening to you through your healing that might not make sense. Don't downplay any of that stuff, because there's always usually a reason in what's going on, or the choices that you're making to get through your healing journey,
whatever it is.
Like we're always on it. We're always going to be on it, but we're becoming healthier versions of ourselves and truly beginning to know ourselves through that journey.
Yeah. And I just love your perspective. And the main reason I wanted to have you on here is because, really your spirituality, whatever that is so separate and distinct from your church. But the way we're brought up, the way I was brought up, is the church was God and God was the church. And they weren't separated for me as like, it was the only way you could get to your spirituality was through that one single religion. And in the case of non-Catholic Christianity, that gets very narrow. And so what I love about this is you can also sweep out of your whole concept of spirituality, and in your case, in my case, relationship with God, anything having to do with the church. The church is an institution. God is God, or spirit is spirit, or universe is universe, which I love. And any institution is flawed.
Yeah. And it reminds me of, not to get into a whole big thing about this, but I watched the interview between Oprah and Meghan.
Speaking of institutions.
And that's what it made me think of. And actually, when she was talking and sharing stuff with Oprah, it was very clear, because I experienced that when I'm telling my story, that she had experienced trauma, how she was like, you can see it in her body, you can see it in her emotions, in her face. And she's a beautiful soul. I think she's a beautiful soul. But you could see how she was struggling to share the story, because it's like so hard when we're sharing a story with somebody who can't possibly understand experientially what we're portraying.
Yeah.
That was the same thing. There was like this institution and the family, and trying to like separate these two things that are so tightly entwined. That is exactly what spiritual trauma is. It's like, how do you disentangle God from church?
Yeah.
And find him for yourself, and really discover like, what does he mean to you, and what kind of a relationship do you want to have with him? Because it does not have to be what you were told it had to be.
That statement right there is beauty. And I love it. And I love the way now you bring this to entrepreneurs and help us to wind it into how we think about our business, with the concept that if we're not connected to something, it gets very hard to run a business because you're alone. So thank you for that. So if there is somebody watching this either live or on replay who's at that point where it's like, I know there's more, I can't find it, and these people talking about spirituality make me crazy because I can't even understand what that is. What's a first step they could take to kind of get past that frustration and move into an understanding or a step forward? What's a good takeaway tool somebody could play with here?
Yeah, so I actually do have a freebie. I can drop it in the group later.
That would be great. Please do.
It's an audio. I actually have the audio and video and the transcription because I try and be inclusive of everybody.
Excellent.
And it comes with a workbook, and it really dives into connection through your values. And so diving into like figuring out what your values are, because I think the biggest thing that we face sometimes is like we don't even know why or what we stand for. Like if we don't understand what like those things are that we truly believe strongly in, because sometimes, especially coming from that background, we've been told what our values are. We've been told what's important in life and what's important in our own personal spiritual walk. And so discovering what those are actually for yourself outside of all of that stuff.
Awesome. So you've actually got a tool that can help people walk through this process.
Yes, fantastic. Exactly.
Yeah. If you would drop that link in the comments in the group, I'll copy it off to everywhere else that we're streaming this, because I think a number of people could find that really useful.
Definitely. Yeah.
That is fantastic. So any events or things coming up that we should be aware of in your life that we might be interested in?
Yeah. So two things. We just started the live round of Soulful You. So this is a monthly program. You commit for 3 months, but if you want to stay beyond that, you can. And I say live round because this month I'm actually going to be doing the trainings live. And after this month, they'll just be, you'll be able to watch the replays.
Awesome.
So I utilize a framework called CASH, which is connection, authenticity, soulful strategy, and heart-led soul or heart-led sales. And so in Soulful You, it is heart-led soul. And this is where how it all connects together, like connection and authenticity. And so this obviously all relates to you, your own connection to yourself and to God or spirit, whoever. Yeah. And then we also have a monthly live coaching call on Zoom, and a Facebook Live Q&A. So there's a ton of support while you're going through this journey of rediscovering yourself. And so that is, that's one thing that's going on now. We've technically already started, but we haven't done any trainings yet. So.
Oh, awesome. So folks can still jump on that bandwagon.
Yeah, so I can drop the link for that. And then at the end of this month, I am doing Soulful Engagement Workshop, which is you're going to spend 2 to 3 hours with me. Now, usually I do these as like one-on-one intensives where we spend like a month together with like a few different calls and Voxer access and all of that. And it's over $1,000 investment for that. So I'm offering a workshop in a group setting, but with like one-on-one feel. And I'm only charging $111 for it. So it's super low cost, because I really feel strongly that people really need this, and they're feeling like they have to do engagement in a certain way, and it feels really misaligned. So there's going to be like a teaching training portion, and then of course Q&A, but I'm actually also offering hot seat consulting on that call.
Beautiful.
So that you can walk away with your own customized engagement strategy that feels really good to you to go and implement right away. And you'll have lifetime access to the call and a week in the Facebook group where you can ask any follow-up questions you have. So super low cost, super high value.
I love that. So look, when it comes time to launch that, feel free to come back in the group and let people know about it. And we can remind them by retagging this interview as well, because the thing that I really like about the way you talk about this is we all talk or hear talk of heart-centered entrepreneurship. And I think it has a lot of definitions, and I think the word has gotten kind of overused.
Yeah.
But you're really talking about getting soul-centered, spirit-centered, and that to me gives real definition to heart-centered. So I love that this is what you're about. I love that you're in the group. I'm really grateful for that, and for all the time you took with us today to talk through this really important topic. So I can't thank you enough. I'm thrilled to have you here. And any way we can support you, the community, myself, you be sure and let us know. And thank you for dropping those comments in here later so we can find your stuff. Feel free to do actually a whole new post in the group with that information.
Perfect.
If that's easier to do.
Definitely do that. Perfect. Thank you so much, Pam. I really enjoyed this conversation too. I feel like there's so many of us that need to hear this. So
agree. So thanks for using this platform to get the word out. All right, everybody, you guys have a great rest of Tuesday. I will see you again. We have more Snack and Learns this week, as you know, and we will be glad to chat later. But for now, I'm so grateful for Bre. Any of you have any questions about connection in moving our businesses forward, it sounds like we found our resident expert on the topic. So have a great rest of the day, folks.